Put your hands behind your back.
The brick was cold against his face. His shoulder screamed. One officer had him pinned hand on his neck, twisting his arm behind his back. He hadn't run, hadn't resisted, hadn't done anything except walk to his car. But none of that mattered. Because in that officer's eyes, he was already guilty. What happened in the next 60 seconds didn't just change his night. It exposed a truth about America that we desperately need to confront. And if you've ever been judged before you opened your mouth, if you've ever been feared before you made a move, then you need to hear this story. Drop a comment right now, if you're ready for the truth, because the ending, you won't see it coming. His name was David Coleman, 41 years old, FBI Special Agent, Counterterrorism Division. 12 years hunting threats most Americans never hear about, clean record, decorated, the kind of man who'd taken an oath to protect strangers. But tonight, none of that existed. Tonight he was just a black man in a hoodie, stopping at a convenience store for water and protein bars before heading home. No badge on his chest, no gun on his hip, no authority visible to the naked eye. And in America, invisible credentials mean invisible protection. David walked out into the parking lot, keys in hand, mind already on the hot shower waiting at home. Completely unaware that someone inside had just made a phone call. Completely unaware that a patrol officer was pulling into the lot at that exact moment. Completely unaware that his next 60 seconds would test every ounce of training he'd ever received, not as an agent, but as a black man in America. Here's the thing about split-second judgments. They're rarely about facts. They're about fear, assumption, conditioning. And David was about to become the subject of all three. Officer Mitchell spotted him immediately, saw the hoodie, saw the quick pace, saw the skin tone. He'd gotten a call moments earlier, vague, generic. Someone had reported suspicious activity, a possible theft at the store. The description? Black male, hoodie, left on foot. That was it, that was all it took. Hey, stop right there. Mitchell's voice cut through the parking lot like a whip. David turned, confused, his hand still gripping his car keys. He hadn't done anything wrong, but confusion in high-stakes moments, it can look like guilt. And guilt gives permission. Hands where I can see them, now. David complied, hands up, palms open, keys dangling from one finger. I'm just going to my car, officer, he said, voice steady, controlled, no aggression, no challenge. But here's what most people don't understand, compliance doesn't always register as cooperation. Sometimes it registers as a threat trying to look innocent. Officer Mitchell closed the distance in 3 strides, grabbed David by the shoulder, spun him hard, slammed him face first against the brick wall of the convenience store. The impact rattled David's teeth. His cheekbone pressed into cold, rough stone, his arm wrenched behind his back. What did I do? David asked, calm, even every word measured. Someone reported a theft, and Mitchell said, breathing hard, you match the description. A theft. David Coleman, a man who'd spent over a decade protecting national security, tracking terrorist cells, analyzing threat matrices, was being accused of stealing. And in that moment, pressed against that wall, David had a choice. A choice that would determine whether he went home that night or ended up in handcuffs, or worse. Here's what most people don't understand about moments like this. Your response in the first 30 seconds determines everything. Escalate, and you confirm their assumptions. Resist, and you give them justification. Comply, and you might, just might, survive with your dignity intact. David knew this, not just because he'd been trained as a black man navigating America, though he had been, his entire life, but because he'd been trained as a federal agent. He understood threat assessment, de-escalation, strategic patience, the psychology of power and perception. So he didn't yell, he didn't pull away, he didn't demand to speak to a supervisor or threaten a lawsuit. He did something smarter. He waited. 3 seconds. 4, 5. Let Mitchell feel in control. Let the adrenaline peak, let the moment settle. Then, voice calm as stone, David said. Officer, I'm a federal agent. My credentials are in my back left pocket. Silence. Mitchell's grip tightened for a second, then loosened. Yeah, right, he muttered, everyone's a cop these days. But something in David's tone, something in the absolute absence of panic, the surgical calm, made Mitchell pause. Because people who are lying, they usually show tells, rapid breathing, elevated pitch, pleading. David showed none of that. Check the pocket, David said. Not a request, a statement. Mitchell hesitated, then reached into David's back left pocket, pulled out a black leather credential case, flipped it open, and saw the gold badge. FBI, Special Agent David L. Coleman. Time didn't stop. But everything changed. Mitchell's face went pale. He stepped back like he'd touched a live wire, stared at the badge, then at David, then back at the badge. You're FBI? David turned slowly, met Mitchell's eyes. No anger, no smugness, just quiet, unyielding authority. Yes. And you just assaulted a federal officer based on a vague description and zero probable cause. The weight of those words landed like a verdict. Here's what that moment teaches us. Power is contextual. 30 seconds earlier, David was a suspect, a threat, someone to be controlled. Now, he was untouchable. Not because he'd changed, but because Officer Mitchell's perception of him had changed. That's the insidious nature of bias. It doesn't see people, it sees categories. And categories can shift in an instant, if you have the right credentials. I got a call, Mitchell stammered. Someone said there was... Someone said what? David interrupted. Voice surgical, precise. That a black man in a hoodie was in the store? That's not probable cause, officer, that's profiling. Mitchell shifted his weight, defensive. Look, I was just doing my job. Your job, David said, each word deliberate, is to serve and protect, not to assume, not to profile, not to slam citizens against walls because they fit a description that could apply to millions of people. He paused. Let it breathe. I could file a formal complaint right now, I could have your conduct reviewed, I could make this a very long night for you. Another pause. Mitchell's face flushed. But I'm not going to. Mitchell blinked, confused, almost relieved. Because David continued, I want you to remember this moment, I want you to think about what you assumed, and I want you to ask yourself one question. What if I hadn't been FBI? What if I'd just been David Coleman, civilian? Would you have believed me? Or would I have ended up in handcuffs? Or in the back of your car? Or worse? Silence. The question hung in the air like smoke. Because they both knew the answer. David Coleman walked to his car that night, without another word. No charges, no real apology, just one officer left standing in a parking lot, forced to confront his own assumptions. But here's the deeper truth. David was protected that night, not by justice, but by a badge. A symbol of authority that in an instant, transformed him from suspect to superior. And that raises the question we can't ignore. What about everyone who doesn't have a badge? Every single day, black men and women navigate spaces where they're presumed dangerous until proven otherwise. Where their calm is read as defiance. Where their fear is read as guilt. Where a hoodie, a skin tone, a zip code becomes probable cause. This story isn't just about David Coleman. It's about the millions of people who've been pinned against walls, literally and figuratively, and had no badge to flash. No credentials to shift the narrative. No protection beyond their own composure and pure luck. The data doesn't lie. Stanford University research shows that black drivers are stopped more frequently than white drivers, and that officers use less respectful language during these stops. Department of Justice studies reveal that black men are nearly 3 times more likely to be searched during a traffic stop than white men, even though white drivers are more likely to be found with contraband. And FBI data itself confirms that implicit bias training, while helpful, isn't enough to counteract deeply ingrained societal conditioning. So what do we do with this? How do we move forward when the system itself is built on broken assumptions? Here's what David Coleman's story teaches us. 1. Dignity under pressure is an act of resistance. David didn't yell, he didn't escalate, he used strategic calm to survive and shift the power dynamic. That's not weakness, that's mastery. 2. Symbols matter, but they shouldn't have to. A badge changed everything in seconds, but justice shouldn't depend on credentials, it should depend on humanity, on seeing people as people first. 3. Awareness is the first step toward change. Officer Mitchell walked away different than he arrived. He was confronted with his assumptions in a way that couldn't be ignored. That doesn't erase bias, but it plants a seed, and seeds when tended, can become movements. And 4. This work isn't just about survival, it's about transformation. We don't just want to navigate broken systems, we want to dismantle and rebuild them. We want a world where no one needs a badge to be treated with basic human dignity. David drove home that night. Safe, shaken, but not broken. And the next morning he went back to work. Back to protecting a country that doesn't always protect him. Because that's what resilience looks like. Not just surviving, but continuing, building, fighting for better. If this story moved you, don't just watch and scroll. Share it, talk about it. Use it as a starting point for the harder conversations we need to have about justice, bias, and what real accountability looks like. Drop a comment below, telling me about a time you were judged before you were known. Let's build a community that refuses to accept assumptions as truth. And subscribe. because every story we tell here is designed to do one thing: empower you with truth, strategy, and the knowledge that you are not alone in this fight. Remember, the badge doesn't make the man. The man makes the meaning of the badge. I'll see you in the next one.